please welcome Sam!
Thanks, y'all. I'm Sam Ford, and I am not a spy or a professional athlete or a farmer or a renowned physician, and I don't know Jack Harlow, but I'm here today to talk to you about my life and career, a lot more about Kentucky, and a lot about each of you and what lies before you as an opportunity. So we're going to be talking about co-creating Kentucky's future. And by co-creating, I mean how are all of us going to build the future of the place that we're from. What do? My high school principal said, "Love what you're doing, Sam. I have no idea what it is, but I love it." So what we've been working on, my partners and I, are on this idea of how do we bolster innovation? How do we see the future of our country, the future of technology, happening in places like each of the places you all are coming from all over the state today. So that's what I want to talk to you about. This is the spot I'm from. I don't know if any of you all know where Ohio County, Kentucky is, but it's in the West Kentucky coal fields up I-165. Grew up about an hour from here. And my family, when I was growing up, I'm a first-generation college student. We're working in industries like tobacco farming and coal mining and coal-fired power plants. Industries some of you all may know a little bit about, but industries that have been on the decline. So as I thought about my opportunities growing up, I knew that I had to figure out what was next for me. And when I was in sixth grade, do we have sixth graders here? Do we have any sixth graders here? Okay, all right, we got a few. When I was in sixth grade, my grandmother had written as a volunteer for the local newspaper. And she asked me, she was having some health problems, she asked me if I would take over her newspaper column. As you can see, it was in the Women's Features Society column of the newspaper, so you can imagine how cool I felt as a middle school boy writing for the Women's Features section of the newspaper. But before Facebook, this was how people kept up with what was happening in town. And I got the bug for writing. Once I discovered that the newspaper liked free writing, this is pre-internet, so there wasn't a chance to publish what you had for breakfast or post those TikToks. I convinced the newspaper to let me write all kinds of stuff. I started a fictional narrative and had a cliffhanger ending every week with these private investigators. And I started a pro wrestling column. And nothing was more exciting than getting stopped out at the Super Walmart and be asked about what's going to happen to Curtis and Powell. How are they going to get out of their latest jam? But it was really exciting to me to imagine you could find an audience. So that took me here to Western Kentucky University. I got married in high school. I'm not suggesting that teachers, I'm not suggesting any of your students consider this pathway. But first-generation college student, married in high school, came here to WKU, and I thought I'd pursue my career in journalism, but this thing came along around the same time called the internet. And the newspaper business suddenly didn't make as much sense anymore because there were all these new ways, not on your phone then, but at least on your computer, that you could access information. So I got hit with a theme of my career, digital disruption, at the very beginning of my career. So that left me to wonder, what am I going to do? I thought I would come here, get trained, and then go wherever the world took me to cover the latest news. And I was no longer sure of that career path. So instead, I got interested in digital disruption, and I ended up going to grad school at a place called MIT in Massachusetts. Are any of you all familiar with MIT? We started a think tank focused on the rise of new digital technologies. So at that time, YouTube had just launched, Facebook was new, and people were trying to figure out how all these new technologies would change how people access information. So I worked while I was at MIT on studying all these new technologies. I also taught a class on the history of professional wrestling, which we can talk about later, and ended up as a Jeopardy question. That is my most trivial accomplishment. I have to warn you, since I was your age, I've been making dad jokes. So my career focused on researching pop culture and how media was changing entertainment, etc. And I discovered that a lot of companies were trying to figure out the same sort of technologies. They may not be media companies. So I entered into a career of consulting, and there may be some companies you know here. I moved to New York City in 2008, before you all were born, to consult with companies who were trying to figure out what to do about all these new digital publishing capabilities. I discovered that the clients were everywhere, and the internet allowed you to work from anywhere. So by the end of 2009, I came back to Kentucky and said, why can't I continue to pursue this work from right here in the Bluegrass State? So since 2009, I've lived here in Bowling Green and had to go travel around the world, including spending a lot of time in New York City with apartments along the way, working on projects like for a company called Univision. Working with these guys here on the left are two game developers from here in Bowling Green who we worked with on a TV documentary to research a topic called gerrymandering, which you all may have learned about in some of your classes, and they made a mobile game about how gerrymandering works. Most recently, I was with a company called Paramount, working with Simon & Schuster, their book publishing division, and trying to find new ways to bring books to market. In the meantime, I've consulted with a lot of organizations from right here in Kentucky, organizations that are all over the world, but my work wasn't here. And that's when I had an epiphany a few years ago. I was up at MIT working on a project, and a world-renowned roboticist said, I want to hear more about the innovative things that are happening in Kentucky. And that led them to turn to me and say, could you organize an innovation tour here in Kentucky so I could see the innovative things that are happening in Western Kentucky? So in 2017, we brought a whole crew down, and we started visiting Logan County, Ohio County, here in Warren County, and talking about all the innovative technologies and companies that are being built up here. In return, we ended up doing an innovation tour on the eastern side of your state. Do we have any folks from eastern Kentucky here today? Got a few folks from the eastern side of the state. So in fall 2017, we brought MIT researchers, Carnegie Mellon researchers all throughout Appalachian Kentucky to look at innovative technologies and how they're being used. Before we knew it, we had something going, and places like the Boston Globe and NPR radio station were covering stories about this dialogue between MIT and Kentucky innovators. That led us to start working with groups like MIT and the University of Southern California to think about how we bring Kentucky together to work on the future of Kentucky. That led us to create a new organization, which we're going to have a table downstairs when you get to the Downing Student Union later to talk about this. Accelerate Kentucky, which is focused on how do we inspire all of us to build the future together. One of the things we've done is create a new organization in 2022 called the Metals Innovation Initiative. How many of you all know anything about the metals industry? Does anybody know anything about the metals industry? So Kentucky is one of the leading producers of aluminum, steel, and copper products. The Metals Innovation Initiative is focused on how can we bring all of us together to innovate that industry. Now, you may say, what do I care about those metals? These are all the kinds of products that those metals from Kentucky go on to make. Buildings, bridges, roads, aluminum cans, anything you all like to drink. There's about a half a chance that the can came out of Logan County, Kentucky, from Logan Aluminum, as an example. The other cool thing about the metals industry is that it is built on a circular economy. Metals are infinitely recyclable. So you can have an aluminum can, you put it in recycling, within 90 days that can is back out again with a new beverage in it that you can buy from the store. The Metals Innovation Initiative is also going to have a table and activity downstairs this afternoon so you can learn more about what they're doing. But for Accelerate Kentucky, we're also working on how do we inform people about the possibilities of what's next. So we're doing work in Eastern Kentucky schools that are focused on the history of maker culture in Kentucky, how we've always not necessarily had every resource we need, but we can build solutions for ourselves with whatever we had around us. That is Kentucky's tradition. How do we bring that to the tools of the future? How are we using AI? How are we using robotics to be able to build the tools of the future? This group you can see here with the bicycles, this is a group of, every year, a group of MIT students ride their bicycles from the East Coast to the West Coast and put on STEM learning festivals for middle schoolers across the country. And they come through Kentucky, and we help host them every year as they pass through. They're going to be doing a workshop in a festival in Hazard on the eastern side of the state, and here in Bowling Green in June. So happy to tell you all more about that. We're also working on inspiring. Kentucky has a rich tradition of storytelling. How do we help find storytellers who are from here in our region and give them the technology, the tools, the exposure that they need to tell their stories on a wider scale? So these are some of the Kentucky-based storytellers that we've been working with. How many of you are from here in the Bowling Green area? So we got a few people who are from here in town. As I've been working on this, I've also been getting involved with folks who are doing this kind of work here in the Bowling Green area. Here's a stat for you. We are set potentially to grow by another city of Bowling Green in the next 25 years. As Nashville is one of the fastest growing areas in the country, Bowling Green's the fastest growing city in Kentucky. What do we want that to look like? By the time you all, God forbid, I know, are my age, and potentially leaders here in Kentucky, what do we want Kentucky to look like? And that's not a question for me to answer. I believe that's a question for you to answer. So one of the things we're doing is attracting a whole set of new types of technology companies to come here to Kentucky to do what they do all over the world and headquarter here. These are some of the folks that I've been working with on that in the past year, including even my own company, Suspenders of Disbelief, with my partners at the University of Southern California, who decided to locate their company here. We're working with media companies, historic sites, and other places to think about how they tell the story of their place. So that's the kind of stuff I'm working on. I know we're at time, and I'm looking forward to your questions. So we'll move on to the question and answer section. Thanks, y'all.